So as you heard, my name is Philip. I come from the powerful nation of Canada. Why did you laugh? We have a lot of natural resources in Canada. We've got maple syrup. We've got Alanis Morissette. And we have Justin Bieber. We also have French Canadians. Now, as a Canadian, on behalf of all Canadians, I will apologize for one of those things. I will not say which one. No, but I'm here to share with you guys a story. It's actually something that's kind of special for me. Something special happened. It happened about a couple of months ago, end of June, and well, I had my first experience with Tantra. And when I say Tantra, I do mean tantric massage. For those who don't know, a tantric massage it's like a regular massage, but it's a little bit more sensual. Some would even say it's a bit erotic. And the reason I had this experience is my friend had actually invited me for like this 4-day hippie event. It's one of these events that you go to, and it looks like it's like Mad Max, but a version of Mad Max where everyone went to therapy. It was crazy. It completely blew my mind. Like, I walked in there in the space, it just felt so like different. I walked in and it was like things were steampunk. They built these giant caravans with these campers. There was all these different kind of costumes. I'm talking like corsets. I'm talking like sequence dresses. People were dressed up. People were dressed down. There were indeed naked people at this event. You would look over and you would see naked people hanging out at a bonfire. You would see naked people dancing in the mud. And sometimes naked people would try to give you a hug. If you let them. Consent is important. And yeah, you come here and they have this whole philosophy. There's this whole thing that you have to follow, these ideas you have to keep in your mind. Ideas, around spirituality, around being your authentic self. Things about connecting to the inner world. And they encourage you to explore. They say, take the burden of adulthood off of your shoulders and go out there and explore and be curious as though you were a child. And so with that note, I thought, I'm going to go do a tantric massage. So the course, it was a workshop, and it had 2 rules. The first rule was that it was going to be a non-verbal event. So even though we were connecting with strangers, we weren't allowed to speak. The second rule is that consent would be appreciated and respected at all times. So whenever you felt unsafe or you felt like this is too much, you could give the namaste gesture, and that would end it. And the last bit of words we spoke was agreeing to these rules, and then it began. And it began with a courtship ritual. Now what this involved is all of us kind of standing up and moving around this space. You can imagine it was like a canopied tent out in this field. And we weren't allowed to speak, and they would play this like Enya-style whale music. And they would instruct us. They would say, try to look out and find anybody that you connect with, that you feel a vibe with. Just move around, get some eye contact going, see who you connect with. And then eventually, once you had that connection, you could begin with a little bit of touch, experimental touch, a brush of the hand across the cheek. You could play a playful, palm on somebody's chest. You could go for a cheeky squeeze. It was all fine. Now, the only problem is I didn't do well at this stage. And part of it was that as this was going on, I saw all of these sparkly, twirly costumes that everyone was wearing, and I was listening to this whale music. I was kind of reminded of the ballroom scene from the movie Labyrinth. And I thought to myself, this could be my moment. Like, this is it, guys. I'm Jennifer Connelly, and I'm gonna find my Goblin King. And so I was moving through the crowd, just like trying to make eye contact with like whoever looked like a rock star David Bowie. And then the instructor was like, okay, we've now finished the courtship ritual. Please have a seat. And I didn't find anybody. And so when the instructor said, now go to the person you made a match with, I panicked. And I looked up, and I met eyes with this Dutch woman. And I don't want to say that she was unattractive, that is not true. It's just in my Goblin King fantasy, I was like thinking of something a bit hairier, you know? Maybe with a good beard, appreciation for fine wine, and like, I don't know, a stable job. And he'd have a nerdy side too, but talk about Marvel and Game of Thrones. But I didn't get that. Instead, I got this Dutch woman. But you know what? I'm not going to fail my Tantra workshop at level 1. So I looked at her and I said, come on, Miss Frau. Come on, Miss Frau. So you and I, we're going to do this. We are going to have a tantric experience. And then, wordlessly, she crosses her hands in front of me. This means that she wants to play the passive role. So not only is my first tantric experience going to be heterosexual, but she wants me to be the man. So, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So next thing I know, I've got this half-naked woman lying in front of me. And I'm instructed to grab her hand. And this is important. This becomes the next way that they're going to communicate consent. If, you know, she doesn't like what I'm doing, I get a tap. But if I get a squeeze, it means keep going. So the instructor begins, and she's like, we're going to begin by exploring the arm. So I'm holding her hand. With my other hand, I'm going up and down her arm. And the instructor's like, can you feel her skin? Is it soft? Can you feel the muscles? Does she have scars? Are there little bits of hair? I'm like, yeah. She's rubbing an arm. And then she's like, I want you to focus on your partner's breathing. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. I'm like, okay, so far so good. And then it becomes the next step. She's like, when you feel ready, go ahead and explore the rest of your partner's body. It's like, okay, I can do this. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, and I begin to make my move. Mm-hmm. But I notice as I go over her shoulder, she tenses up. And I'm thinking to myself, I can look at her, I can see that she's nervous, this is awkward, her eyes are closed. I'm thinking to myself, I gotta take this a little bit slow. So I start with her collarbone. Just exploring this area here. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Guys, this earned me a squeeze of my hand. I'm doing something right. So I decided that, like, okay, so now I'm starting to get, you know, how this works, and I start to move as the instructor informs us, but I can keep feeling that she's tensing, and whenever she would tense, I would go back to her collarbone. And eventually I would move a bit further, go back to the collarbone, and it kind of became like I was playing this person like a musical instrument. And then anytime she tensed, it was like I was playing the wrong note, and I'd have to go back to where I began. But slowly but surely, I eventually made it towards her belly, which is the place that she seemed to be the most nervous about. But by the time I got there, I really kind of felt like I was understanding, you know, how her body operates. I was kind of understanding what her needs were, and the instructor was saying to us, when you get to the belly, feel her skin, feel the curves of her body, draw little shapes. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And by this stage, I actually was starting to feel a connection with the stranger. It began to feel like I was, my breathing was starting to match her breathing, and you know, I was really attuned to the way that her muscles would tense or relax based on where I touched her, and I really felt like we had this strong connection. And then the instructor said, go ahead and explore your partner's breasts. There wasn't a strong connection there. So, you know, I went back to the collarbone, which is a safe space for both of us. But despite that little hiccup, we did actually make it to the end of the exercise. And the final pose is, I was like sitting like this, and then she was over me like a Eiffel Tower. And I had my hands around her like a dove. And I was like, and we were kind of like in this pose, this final pose. But you feel at this point, that she wasn't relaxing like she was before. And I felt like we had kind of lost that connection, that something was wrong. And then she whispered in my ear in Dutch that she would like to lay down. So I'm Big Spoon, she's Little Spoon, I'm holding her, and that's when she started to cry. And my first thought was, oh my God, I've broken her. I was doing so good. But then I realized that in her body language and this kind of communication that we built for each other, it wasn't like she was pushing away or she's asking me to stop. In fact, if I trusted my instinct, it told me to squeeze tighter. And that's when she began to explain to me why she was crying. But she was doing so in Dutch. And I couldn't understand her because by that stage, I'd also begun to cry. So here's two grown-ass adults lying on the floor of a tantric experience, having a deep cry, like we're listening to Lana Del Rey. And then, so we're having this experience, and then the instructor goes, "It's now over. You can now speak to your partner." And then, we get up, and I look at her. She opens her eyes. She looks at me. I can see the tears in her eyes. She can see the tears in my eyes. What can we do? We start to laugh. It's the only thing we can do. We start to laugh and we break the tension, and I just think to myself as I'm wiping the tears away from my eyes, wow, what an experience. What an amazing experience. I felt like I unlocked this superpower. Like I could go up to any stranger on the street and gently caress them. And we would have this connection. And I thought this was amazing. I was really transformed by it. And then we began the small talk. She told me about her life. I told her about my life. And then it was over. She went one way, and I went another. But as I was walking away, I was thinking to myself, man, I didn't have the courage to ask her why she had cried. Now luckily, near the end of the event, after an entire weekend of crazy hippie shit, I did run into her again. And I didn't recognize her at first. She waved me over, I came up, and she's like, hey, it's me. I'm like, hey. She's like, do you remember me? I'm the Tantra girl. I'm like, oh yeah. Yeah, I remember you. And because I had, drank a little bit more and experienced some spiritual sides of myself, I felt a little bit more confident to finally ask her, why is it that you cried? And she said to me that before coming to this event, she had experienced a number of near-fatal heart attacks. That they had been so frequent and so powerful that she was asking herself, why am I still alive? Why am I made to suffer like this? And she said, the reason why I cried was because the first time that I haven't felt like dying was during this weekend. And I listened to this, and then she apologizes to me. She says, I'm sorry, I guess for you it was something a little bit more sexual. So, in my most polite Canadian way, I looked at her and I said, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say this to you, but I'm gay. And she looks at me and she's like, what? I don't know how to explain this to you, but I'm a lesbian. So this resulted in about 15 minutes of laughter as we tried to figure out how the lone gay guy and the lone lesbian in a primarily heterosexual event found each other and experienced Tantra for the first time. And at the time we couldn't make sense of it. We just kept laughing. But now that I've had some time to think about it, and it's been a couple of months, summer was long ago, I'm sorry to tell you all, I feel that I'm actually kind of happy that I had this experience the first time with a woman. And I recognize that, I didn't feel self-conscious like I would have felt if I was truly attracted to this person. I didn't feel like I needed to impress this person. I felt like her and I could just kind of have an experience for the sake of having an experience. And this is the funny thing, because I didn't go to that Tantra experience originally to find my Goblin King. I went there to explore. And what I discovered was something truly special. Thank you. I feel that for the sake of the story, I should shout out to the late David Bowie. But I thought about this question. If I was going to be honest, there's an artist called Perfume Genius.
Woo! Yeah.
I grew up with him from like being a super toxic masculine country boy to connecting to his music and him kind of helping me get to a more tender emotional side of myself, especially the way his music develops. I'll give a shout out to him if he's listening.